So, good afternoon, everyone. We are the Group 2 and we are tasked to discuss the product oriented performance based assessment. The performance based task requires performance based assessment, in which the actual student performance is assessed through a product, such as a completed project or work that demonstrates level of task achievement. In product oriented, it is concerned on the product alone or the outcome of the student's performance, not in the process. So we have here the links of the videos about the process versus product oriented, and I want you to watch any of the following videos and afterwards decide which is better, or are they equally important in assessing performance? Process versus product oriented. Process-oriented performance-based assessment is concerned with the actual task performance rather than the output or product of the activity. Product-oriented performance-based assessment is a kind of assessment wherein the assessor views and scores the final product made and not on the actual performance of making the product. It is concerned on the product alone and not on the process. It is more concerned to the outcome on the performance of the learner. It is also focuses on the achievement of the learner. So, in process-oriented, it focuses on the actual task performance, while in the product-oriented, it focuses on the outcome of a product.
So, performance-based assessment has three integral components, which are the product-oriented learning competencies, task designing, and scoring rubrics. Let's move on to the product-oriented learning competencies. Learning competencies associated with products or outputs are linked with an assessment of the level of expertise manifested by the product. Thus, product-oriented learning competencies target at least three levels: novice or beginner's level, skilled level, and expert level. Such levels correspond to Bloom's taxonomy in the cognitive domain in that they represent progressively higher levels of complexity in the thinking process. There are other ways to state product-oriented learning competencies. For instance, we can define learning competencies for products or outputs in the following way. So first is level 1. Does the finished product or project illustrate the minimum expected parts or functions, which is the beginner level? Level 2. Does the finished product or project contain additional parts and functions on top of the minimum requirements, which tend to enhance the final output, which is the skilled level? Level 3. Does the finished product contain the basic minimum parts and functions, have additional features on top of the minimum, and as aesthetically pleasing, which is the expert level? For example, the desired product is a representation of cubic prism made out of cardboard in an elementary geometry class. So, example, the desired product is a representation of a cubic prism made out of cardboard in an elementary geometry class. The learning competencies. The final product submitted by the students must first possess the correct dimensions 5 by 5 by 5, which is the minimum specifications. Second, be sturdy, made of durable cardboard and properly fastened together, which is the skilled specifications. Third, be pleasing to the observer, preferably properly colored for aesthetic purposes, which is the expert level. Another example. The desired product is a scrapbook illustrating the historical event called EDSA 1 People Power. The learning competencies. The scrapbook presented by the students must be: first, contain pictures, newspaper clippings, and other illustrations for the main characters of EDSA 1 People Power, namely Corazon Aquino, Fidel V. Ramos, Juan Ponce Enrile, Ferdinand E. Marcos, Cardinal Sin, which is the minimum specifications. Second, contain remarks and captions for the illustrations made by the student himself for the roles played by the characters of EDSA 1 People Power, which is the skilled level. Last, be presentable, complete, informative, and pleasing to the reader of the scrapbook, which is the expert level. So performance-based assessment for products and projects can also be used for assessing outputs of short-term tasks such as the one illustrated below for outputs in a typing class. Example, the desired output consists of the output in a typing class. The learning competencies, the final typing outputs of the students must possess no more than 5 errors in spelling, which is the minimum specifications, possess no more than 5 errors in spelling, observing proper format based on the document to be typewritten, which is the skilled level. Third, possess no more than 5 errors in spelling, has the proper format, and is readable and presentable, which is the expert level. Notice that in all of the above examples, product-oriented performance-based learning competencies are evidence-based. The teacher needs concrete evidence that the student has achieved a certain level of competence based on the submitted products and projects.
Task designing. How should a teacher design a task for product-oriented performance-based assessment? The design of the task in this context depends on what the teacher desires to observe as output of the students. The concept that may be associated with task designing include first, the complexity. The level of complexity of the project needs to be within the range of ability of the students. Projects that are too simple tend to be uninteresting for students, while projects that are too complicated will most likely frustrate them. So in complexity, the teacher should have the muhatag silag activity sa students nga kanang mo base sa ilaharang ilang ability kay kung muhatag ang teacher og kanang murag lisod para sa students kay dili na sila ganahan mo buhat ana nga ilaha nga activity. The next one will be the appeal. The project or activity must be appealing to the students. It should be interesting enough so that the students are encouraged to pursue the task to completion. It should lead self-discovery of information by students. So dapat kani nga part ang teacher kay muhatag siya sa mga students og kanang activity nga appealing para ang estudyante ganahan mo buhat sa activity. The next one is the creativity. The project needs to encourage students to exercise creativity and divergent thinking. Given the same set of materials and project inputs, how does one best present the project? It should lead the students into exploring the various possible ways of presenting the final output. And the next one will be the goal-based. Finally, the teacher must bear in mind that the project is produced in order to attain a learning objective. Thus, projects are assigned to students not just for the sake of producing something, but for the purpose of reinforcing learning. Example of these are paper folding is a traditional Japanese art. However, it can be used as an activity to teach concept of plane and solid figures in geometry. Provide students with a given number of colored papers and ask them to construct as many plane and solid figures from these papers without cutting them by paper folding only.
Scoring rubrics are descriptive scoring schemes that are developed by teachers or other evaluators to guide the analysis of the product or processes of the student's effort. Assessment is focused on the final product made on the actual performance of making the product. It is to aim to evaluate the results of the outcomes of the students. Scoring rubrics are typically employed when a judgment of quality is required and may be used to evaluate a broad range of subjects and activities. Scoring rubrics can be most useful in grading essays or in evaluating projects such as scrapbooks. Judgments of concerning the quality of a given writing sample may vary depending upon the criteria established by the evaluator. Criteria setting. The criteria for scoring rubrics are statements which identify what really counts on the final output. The following are the most often used major criteria for product assessment: quality, creativity, comprehensiveness, accuracy, aesthetics. From the major criteria, the next task is to identify substatements that would make the major criteria focused on the objectives.
For instance, if we were scoring an essay on 300 years of Spanish rules in the Philippines, the major criterion or quality may possess the following sub-statements. So kung mag-scoring essay rather ta sa 300 years of Spanish rules in the Philippines, na ay tulo ka quality nga dapat natong i-possess. The first one is interrelates the chronological events in an interesting manner. Second, identifies the key players in each period of the Spanish rules and the roles that they played. The last one is succeed in relating the history of the Philippine Spanish rule related as professional, not quite professional but novice. Grading is an example of performances that may be evaluated using scoring rubrics. There are many other instances in which scoring rubrics may be used successfully to evaluate group activities, extended projects, and oral presentations. Also, scoring rubrics scoring cuts across disciplines and subject matter for they are equally inappropriate in assessing any performance task.
Now let me introduce to you other method. Authentic assessment schemes apart from scoring rubrics exist in the arsenal of a teacher. For example, checklists may be used rather than scoring rubrics in the evaluation essays. Checklists enumerate a set of desirable characteristics for a certain product, and the teacher marks those characteristics which are actually observed. And now let's try to find out the difference between general versus task-specific. So in the development of scoring rubrics, it is well bear in mind that it can be used to assess or evaluate specific tasks or general or broad category of tasks. For instance, suppose that we are interested in assessing the student's oral communication skills. Then a general scoring rubric may be developed and used to evaluate each of the oral communication skills. Then, a general scoring rubric may be developed and used to evaluate each of the oral presentations given by the student. So after each oral presentation of the students, the general rubrics are shown to the students, which then allow them to improve on their previous performances. And then the scoring rubrics have this advantage of instantaneously providing a mechanism for immediate feedback. So that would be all our presentation. Thank you for listening.